Welcome to the Jackie Wall Studio Draw an Iris tutorial. Today I will be doing some outline sketching in pencil and then switching over to a micron pigment pens. But grab whatever you have around the house. Pencils, a regular ballpoint pen, or even grab some colored pencils and work in whichever format you like. Our reference shape for the iris is a triangle. So I'm going to start at the base here. Make your lines very, very faint because we will be erasing this. And then I'm going to come up to about the center of my page and make a triangle. Now let's just see what that looks like. So I have about 13 centimeters for each side, so 13 centimeters would be about 5 inches on each side. Then I'm going to split this into thirds. So I'm going to come up about a third of the way and then also a third. We'll be using this as the reference line right here. So a third of the way up from the base of our triangle. All right, so I'm going to find the center point of that line. And we are going to start with our bottom petal. Our bottom petal is going to come down about half of the distance between the base of the triangle and that point. Just put a reference point down there. You don't have to hit it exact. We're just going to use that as a point to reference for coming down to the bottom. Then I am going to put a little dome here for the center of the flower. And I'm going to have a smile coming up like this, and that is going to be our bottom petal. Now I'm going to go out to the left and curve, and I'm going to come down to that point, and same here, I'm going to go up and curve, and I'm going to come down. Whatever feels natural around that point. Now for our top center petal. Just going to make 2 little marks right there on either side of this dome. So basically where that curve is just about to the highest point. And I'm going to use this as my reference point for the top of my petal. I'm going to come out and I'm going to scallop along the edge to that point, and same here, go up, and I'm going to scallop along the edge to that point. And there is our top petal. Now let's work on the 2 petals on the bottom of our iris. First thing I'm going to do is make a curve right here. So I'm a little bit below that reference line, and I'll do the same over here, but I'm going to make them a little bit different to add some visual interest. Then we're going to work on this one over here. I'm going to come to that top petal, and about halfway, just before it starts to curve, I'm going to go over and put a line down. Whoops, that got a little extreme. Just draping down a little bit. And then up from that, where it starts to curve down, I'm going to go out to the side of my iris. I'm going to follow that edge, and then I am going to come to the back of that petal. And then I'm going to work on this petal on the right-hand side. So for this petal, we're going to make it a little bit different. We won't have this dip right here. I'm going to come from here, go out to the edge, follow that edge. Maybe this time I'll have it kind of going up and ruffle in here. And there is the other side petal. Now we have 2 more petals to complete on either side here. So this is indicating that light center of my iris. So I'm going to indicate a light center on these 2 on the other side, either side. So this is indicating the petal is moving in behind that center petal, and these ones are indicating a light center on either side of that petal. Okay, now these petals are going to come up just above that center petal. So I am going to indicate that, and I'm going to do a little ruffle coming up just above, and same over here, coming up just above. All right, and then it is going to come down to this petal down here. So I'm just going to ruffle that out and curve in. Now on this other side, to make it a little bit visually interesting, I'm going to come from where the petal, the top petal and my triangle kind of came together, and I'm going to just ruffle it up, and then I'm going to come around and I'm going to have this petal drop to the top of that one. And there we have the basic outline of our iris. Now I've moved in closer. I will be continuing in pen, but feel free to continue in pencil or in color if you so choose. If you are going to continue, just get rid of that reference triangle and these two reference lines. I'm going to take them out after I have added in my outline in pen. All right, so I'm not going to go over this reference line right here. I want it as a guide later, so that will stay in pencil. But I will start with that bottom curve that we did. Then we curved up on both sides for that bottom petal. We came down. We came down to this reference point down here, and we came back up. And we started with that bottom petal. Then we went to the top petal, and we had two lines coming up just before we started to curve out on that top petal, and we came up along the edge of our triangle and down along the edge of our triangle, just doing a wavy line for that top petal. Did the same thing over here, same basic reference point about halfway until it starts to curve, and I came out to the side just past the triangle, and I ruffled it along the edge of the triangle, and this one I came up just to add a little bit of a different detail to that petal. And then I moved into the two side petals up on top. Now this is the same. I'm not going to mark that in ink right now because that's indicating that lighter center. So I'll be working my lines out from there. So I'm not going to ink those, but I am going to ink on either side of those petals. So let's start with the left-hand side. I came from where that top petal met my triangle, and I came up to the side. Actually, I think I started with this. I started from the top petal and just came out a little bit taller than the petal right here. Then I came down, and then I came around just to add a little bit of a fold in that petal to the bottom triangle where this petal met the bottom triangle. Now for the other side, I did the same thing from here, went up, and I came down in a flutter. And this one ended up being a little bit inside the triangle, just so we had a little bit of difference between the two. Now I need to start adding some depth to my iris. So I'm going to use my 005. It's the finest one that I have. And I'm going to start putting in some lines here that indicate that this petal is behind that center petal. I'm just going to keep building it out line by line to add some depth to my drawing. And I'll start with indicating those petals that are in the back with this type of shading along the edge behind that middle petal. I also want to add some shape and depth to the petal down here, so I am going to suggest that it is curving in right here, and I'm going to put some lines right here, very, very light. I'm very careful to go in very light with ink. I can always add more lines, but I cannot take them away. There we go. So I'm adding some depth to that petal. It's also going to have a center right from here. Then I'm going to come down and add some marks. And I'm just going to start suggesting where there's depth, either with shade or with color. Now remember, usually that center right here is light. Now this petal over here, of course, will have a center that is curving down. So I'm going to follow that as well, down that center. And over here, we need to indicate as well that this petal is in behind that center petal. So I'm going to start building that out as well. We'll want to also add some texture to these petals, so I'm going to have some lines coming here from where it would naturally have a little bit of shadow. And maybe a little bit right in here. And a little bit of a divot right in here, just to start layering in some interest into those petals. Over here, why don't we do the same thing? We'll have it curving in from here. And up here. That's starting to add some depth to those petals. Now here as well, I said that I had left that, I almost erased it, but I still see my reference line right there for the lighter color. And I'll just keep building out those lines one by one, patiently, till I get the effect that I like. So this is where it's probably a yellow center of that petal is building out indicating a change of color. Obviously, if you're working in color today, you can do that using your color. And then this petal, we had this curve in it, so it's showing that our petal is curving in on itself. So I'm going to make sure I put some lines in there to show that there would be some shadow there where the iris is curving in, the petal is curving over itself and overlapping. And I'll just keep working with that. Oh, here, there's probably going to be a bit of a line. And I will show how that line's going into and drawing your eye into the center of the iris. I'm really pleased with how this is starting to look. I just started with very, very faint lines until I was comfortable. I liked the look because I can always stop, but I cannot take lines away when I'm dealing with ink. So I sometimes make mistakes, or I have areas that I'm like, oh, I don't really like how that turned out, but I'm kind of committed, so I have to work with it. So just remember, sometimes those areas that you're really not comfortable with, just take a minute, leave them alone for a while, and then see how you can adapt it. Sometimes the parts of a drawing that I'm very displeased with end up being the parts that I like in the end the most. Another thing that I often use is you can use cross hatching. I don't tend to use it a whole lot. I like to just layer lines and have that movement of the eye with lines moving in basically the same direction rather than against one another. But I do often add dots. I have said before that they're not my favorite because they take more patience sometimes than I would like, but they do add a lot to a drawing. So I'm going to layer in some dots into this center of the iris and into these over here. And it does add some depth and texture that I can't get with just lines alone. I'm going to start working here on these bottom petals as well. Now, as I said, this right here is basically, it's not part of the iris, it's negative space. So that's why I'm trying to add a little bit of texture in these light spots of the iris so that I can show that that is still part of the petal. This right here, though, inside of that is not part of the petal. So I'm going to start building out some lines that show that this petal is going in behind that center petal, and I'll do the same on the other side. Before we end today, I just wanted to show you how I sometimes hold my pen. I grab it like this. So it's a full grab. I have my thumb, my pointer, and my middle finger holding that pen, and then these two fingers underneath just kind of support it. And what that allows me to do is a sweeping motion with the pen. And that creates very, very fine lines. I do this with pencil and with pen. And as you can see, it kind of adds just a feather effect, very, very fine lines. And I use that quite a bit to get very, very detailed work. And it works very well as well to just layer in. It allows a bit more of a sweeping motion than when you hold your pen like this. It's a little more rigid than when I hold like that. Thank you for watching, and remember to subscribe to Just Keep Creating.